All right, here we go. Part 2. I am in my car. I know, this is just now my new office where my little kids can't bother me while I work. So a couple other observations, just teachable moments, examples I wanted to talk about real quick. So I talked about questions for way too long, so sorry if that was rambling, but hopefully it was a little bit helpful. So second, I want to talk about just the use of silence. Don't be afraid to utilize silence in your sessions, and I feel like that's something we could all work on for our final video. Just not feeling the pressure or need to respond immediately when your client, gives you some information. So something that helps me is just like taking a deep breath, like just breathing before you answer. Just take a breath before you answer or respond in the conversation, and don't feel the need to jump in immediately, because often the client needs time just to process their thoughts. You need time to process what's being said, and I'd much rather see you pause for 10 seconds or even a little bit longer and put together what you really want to ask or say than immediately just jump into something, fumble your words, or ask multiple questions. So just a hint, you don't have to do this, but for the final video, I was thinking it might be helpful for some of you to practice reflection of content at the beginning of the session. So when you say, what do you want to talk about today, or what brings you in, the client's going to give you probably like a story or some information about their presenting concern, right? And they might say, I'm feeling very sad, and then you could inquire about what's going on in their life. But typically they may say, this happened, I'm quarantined at home, I had a conflict at work. They're going to give you some content. So it's a good option to reflect content in the beginning of the session. Of course, you can do it throughout the session, but just giving you guys a hint of like how to demonstrate that skill early on. So I would guess you're either going to get one of two types of clients. One client that's going to give you the little bit, tell me why you're here, I have a conflict at work. And then there's going to be the other client that's going to give you the 2-minute version of a rant of the conflict, who it's with, their history, how upset they are, what's going on, who said what. They're going to go on and on and on. So this is how I would respond to reflect content to either one of those. So if someone comes in with a brief, this is my problem, I would say, reflect the content. Okay, so you're struggling with a coworker, or you're struggling with a conflict at work. Tell me more about that. So boom, just a brief, yeah, I've recognized what you said, I heard you, and I'm gonna probe for some more content because you didn't give me very much. If the client gave me a lot of information, which people often do, right? Rather than try to summarize it all or think, what do I have to say? Or just ask another question to keep them talking, why don't you try just stopping? So someone said, this is what happened, they go off. I personally would say, wow, you gave me a lot of information. Let me tell you what I just heard you say. Or I would say something along those lines, so acknowledge, okay, whoa, okay, you've given me a lot of information to process, so let me tell you what I've heard. Or, so you're saying there's a conflict where your boss is singling you out, or, well, something happened and you're worried you might not get the promotion. How does that sound? And then you might, if they say, yeah, like, yep, you got those facts right, you might go on with a probe or a open-ended question to say, tell me more about the relationship with your boss, or what's the work environment typically like? Even maybe, how has that conflict been affecting you? So something more general than, what have you done about it? Can you talk to your boss? I think a lot of you jumped into the problem solving, especially when it's a relational conflict. Well, can you talk to them? What would you say? And that's okay to be solution focused at times, but I'm not interested in that for this class. Okay, so when you're supposed to demonstrate the skills, try not to get into the problem solving mode. Okay, so pause, breathe, use silence. Totally okay to have some silence, even if it feels awkward. And I know that'll become more comfortable with time. Reflect content at the beginning of the session would be very helpful. And then in getting into the reflection of feelings. And the other thing I wanted to point out was, how important and appropriate it is to match your client's like level of affect and energy. So somebody in their video, well, several of you, but I've noticed, especially in your comments, you noticed, or you observed, oh, I laughed with my client. I don't know if that was okay. And it just makes me so happy when I see students begin to respond with some laughter, because humor can be a great tool, and often it's the client might be making light of something, or they might say something that's funny, and that's okay to laugh. When it becomes distracting or minimizing to the concern, obviously it's not something you want to do, but it can be healing sometimes to have some lightheartedness and to connect with the client, especially if they, are using humor and you laugh at what they're saying. I don't think that's disrespectful at all. So I just wanted to say that it can be a very good thing, just to use with, your discretion. But the ones that, if you did in your video, it was totally fine. But it was, it's always good to see like you guys becoming more comfortable with yourselves, with your client, and not so formal or robotic. So matching like kind of how they're talking. Of course, if someone's really up here and intense or on edge or angry or anxious, you're going to want to be calm and speak in a way that's going to kind of tone it down, to de-escalate them. But for example, so in the Thayer review, it was the guy with like a lot of tattoos, I think, who was the dad that couldn't Skype with his daughter, and he was really angry. So I think it was reflecting feeling. Yeah, it was a reflection of feeling. So a couple weeks ago, and he was, using the F word. He was using a lot of profanity. And a lot of you, which was fine, you demonstrated the skill, but you reflected feeling like you're feeling very frustrated. You're pretty upset. And that's totally fine. You're accurate. But I was like just thinking, waiting for someone to be like, man, you feel pissed that your, ex won't let you talk to your daughter. So be like aware that some of these words can be beneficial to the client, because that would have really connected with him based on the language he was using. Someone did say, I think, enraged or furious. That must make you furious. And I was like, yeah, he's furious. He is pissed. So of course, being true to yourself and talking the way you would normally talk, but it's okay to match some intensity with those words, or kind of even your own facial expressions and just what you're presenting to the client. And of course, if you have someone who's more depressed or grieving, you're going to want to make your affect, sadder or slower or calmer and softer. So anyways, I just wanted to point those out. I feel like those were some good things to just give to you to try to begin to incorporate when you're practicing. And then lastly, sorry, these videos end up so long. Just keep talking. Due dates. You guys, we're in the middle of a global pandemic. I understand you're not getting stuff in on time. So I don't think I've taken up at all for anyone so far for turning in something late. Thank you for letting me know what happens. Like if, what comes up, send me an email. I appreciate that. It's respectful for me to know what came up. But just so you know, don't worry. I'm going to accept your work late. And again, unless it's been like a repetitive thing, I don't care if it's a day or two late. So, I mean, I understand so many of you have kids and jobs, and this is crazy. So I wouldn't say that's always the norm. And if this is your first class in the program, I wouldn't expect that across the board, but I am showing you guys grace because I understand. So just wanted to make sure you all knew that. All right. I'll be sending out a link with office hours, and it'll be Thursday. All right. Well, have a good week. Bye.